Good evening, Facebook followers. My name is Tom Lowy. I'm a reporter and columnist from the Galesburg Register-Mail, and I am at a vigil being held here at the Knox County Courthouse, and it is in response to the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh late last week. I think most people know that it happened and the circumstances involved. I believe 11 people killed. And so tonight, organized initially by Jenny Bundy, a Galesburg resident and member of Temple Shalom, which is a temple here in town. Some of the participating organizations include United Against Hate, the Interfaith Collective, the March On Indivisible group, which has held a number of rallies, a number of marches, and then the NAACP is also in attendance. But I think we'll have some speakers tonight, but as you can see, pretty robust turnout for the evening, and it looks like they're breaking out candles, so this will go on after the sun sets. To let people know, this is on the grounds of the Knox County Courthouse, right by the smoking area, actually. And so a large number of people here tonight. To let people know, they have already been heckled by one person who drove around the corner, screaming something not quite intelligible, and probably not worth repeating, but it has been heckled already. I think there's a certain level of concern among everybody now at any kind of gathering. But these people are here tonight, and we're looking at well over 50 people now. To let people know what's happening now, we are at a interfaith vigil for the victims and survivors of the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. And it looks like there will be a candlelight portion to the vigil, so we'll try to stay with this as long as we can. To give folks an idea of the scope of the gathering. Yeah, there's some over here. What are you doing here? I thought you were off today.
Good. I'm Dan. I don't know if you remember me or not. Marjorie is your neighbor. Marjorie, you know. Yeah, a long time ago. She's a great guy. You still live over there on Cherry?
Okay, touch base with viewers once again. My name's Tom Lowy. I'm a reporter from the Galesburg Register-Mail, and we are at an interfaith gathering, a vigil in remembrance of the victims and survivors of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. Folks have gathered here from Temple Shalom, the United Against Hate group, the Interfaith Collective, which is a collection of church members and church leaders dedicated to advancing dialogue between differing points of view and religions. March On Indivisible has members here. They were contacted to take part. And the NAACP. To let folks know, our current Sheriff Dave Clegg is here, and his challenger, Kip Canfield, is also in attendance. Councilman Jerry McCarlin is here. Devon Urels, the president of the NAACP, is here. Pam Davidson, the chairwoman of the Knox County board, is also here. So attendees, young and old, and it looks like we're about ready to get started.
Gathered this evening to remember our Jewish siblings in Pittsburgh who all they were doing was practicing Shabbat. So we come, we mourn, we lament in community. We're Jewish, we're Christian, we're atheist, we're Muslim, we're immigrant, we're hometown people. The most important thing is we are people who come together this evening to stand in love. So tonight, your Interfaith Collective, we're a group of religious leaders here in town. We've planned this service for you. And Jenny Bundy will be leading us mostly through this service as she's from the community of Temple Shalom. So welcome, Jenny Bundy.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good evening. As Monica said, I'm Jenny. I'm a member of Temple Shalom here in town, also a member of the Interfaith Collective. Traditionally in Judaism, if someone is grieving or is in mourning, the traditional thing we say to them is, may God grant you comfort amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And the interesting thing about that is that the word we use for God in this instance is hamakom, which means place. And I think that's really, really appropriate for a night like tonight, because we're making a place here, a sacred space where we can remember the victims in Pittsburgh. As we continue tonight, I and others may be using the word God, and I realize that for some of you that may either feel uncomfortable or may not be in line with your beliefs. And I'd encourage you, if that is a hard word for you, that perhaps in your head, substitute the word God with something that feels better. Perhaps something like source, or spirit, or even the power that unites us tonight. In English, as well as in Hebrew, the word grief doesn't have a singular or a plural. It's always a comprehensive term. And tonight we all share in this grief, and we've all come together to grieve as a community. I hope that tonight we can show that the beauty and the strength of America comes from its diversity, and that we're a better nation when we embrace and celebrate our differences and not shun them. When I look out tonight, it's really beautiful and humbling to see everyone here, and it really makes me believe that we are all one. So thank you all for coming tonight.
And in our first act of remembrance together, we will repeat the names of the 11. So I just ask us to say together just the names. We remember Joyce Feinberg, Richard Godfrey, Rose Malager, Jerry Rubiditz, Cecil Rosenthal, David Rosenthal, Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, Daniel Stein, Melvin Wax, Irving Younger, in your name. And now we're going to have the psalm sung to us in Hebrew. Right here.
Well, it's a privilege, and it's touching to be able to share this with all of you tonight. Many of us are touched by music, and some of us by scripture, and I will do the best I can as a Lutheran to sing this in Hebrew for our brothers and sisters who may understand the beginning of the 23rd Psalm this way.
Now Jim Jacobs will lead us in saying the 23rd Psalm.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long.
I'm going to ask members of the, we have some from the First Lutheran Choir here, if they're not already together, if they will gather here. And we're going to start singing a song some of you may know, and we're going to sing it prayerfully, and only 3 verses, and we hope you will start to join us as we get into it. The first verse is, we are praying in the light of God. And we sing that over and over. We are praying in the light of God. And then we are mourning in the sight of God. And finally, we are loving in the power of God. We are praying in the light 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 of God. We are praying. We are praying.
Now we'll hear from Jeremy Carlin, immediate past president of Temple Shalom.
When evil darkens our world, let us be the bearer of light. When fists are clenched in self-righteous rage, let our hands be open for the sake of peace. When injustice slams door on the ill, the poor, the old, and the stranger, let us pry the doors open. Where shelter is lacking, let us be the builders. Where food and clothing are needed, let us be providers. Where knowledge is denied, let us be the champions of learning. When dissent is stifled, let our voices speak truth to power. When the earth and its creatures are threatened, let us be their guardians. When bias, greed, and bigotry erode our country's values, let us fight to proclaim freedom and liberty throughout the land. In the places where no one acts like human beings, let us bring courage, let us bring compassion, let us bring humanity.
Good afternoon. I'm David Amor. I'm part of the group United Against Hate. I'm not going to give a prayer. I'm going to give some remarks. I'm going to speak as a representative of United Against Hate, but I'm also a member of Temple Shalom, the Temple Shalom congregation, and I have to start with that. As an American Jew who is part of a small, close-knit community where everyone knows each other well, where we all gather at our synagogue every week for services, to teach our kids in religious school, and for fellowship around food and friendship, I'm absolutely sick about what has happened in Pittsburgh. Tree of Life Synagogue, like Temple Shalom, is the center of a strong, vibrant community where people every day go about the kinds of activities that make a house of worship so central in every kind of community across America. For those of you who aren't Jewish, I want you to imagine this could have been your church. Instead of people gathering for a Sunday morning Shabbat service, it could have been people enjoying fellowship in the basement of Allen Chapel, or volunteers preparing chili for Souls to the Polls in the kitchen of First Baptist Church, or young people with safe space sitting around the social hall at First Lutheran, or congregants praying at Immaculate Heart of Mary. The 11 men and women killed on Saturday were Jews, killed at random, but killed because they were Jews, in a Jewish house of prayer. We must honor them as Jews and also recognize that their deaths are part of a long history of persecution and genocide. A history that many of us thought was in abeyance in the West after the horrors of World War II, but which has in recent years been resurgent in Europe and more recently here in America. From the swastikas painted on schools and cemeteries, to the anti-Semitic chants at Charlottesville, to the demonization of George Soros and, quote, Jewish financiers, anti-Semitism has climbed out of its coffin and found a breeding ground on the internet and is sidling into mainstream political discourse in places like Iowa and Washington. So in response to the urgent question, what do we do to stop this madness? One answer is that all of us must be vigilant and fearless in rejecting the anti-Semitic slurs and jokes and insinuations when we hear them or see them or read them. But I want to say that the attack on Tree of Life Synagogue was not only about anti-Semitism. I wasn't being superficial when I invited you to imagine this attack taking place in your own house of worship. Because what happened is also part of another more recent history that includes the white supremacist pro-Confederacy march in Charlottesville last year, and the massacre at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015, among many other instances. because it's important to note that there's nothing in Robert Bauer's history, that's the man who's the suspect in the Pittsburgh shooting, there's nothing in his history to suggest that he was an anti-Semite prior to the 2016 presidential campaign. And his main complaint against the Jews is that they were aiding in refugee resettlement, bringing potential terrorists and criminal foreign elements into our country. Does that sound familiar? He was radicalized in the last 2 years both by the divisive and apocalyptic rhetoric of the campaign and by white supremacist, racist, and nativist social media streams that campaign has made more visible and helped to normalize. I really don't want to go down a partisan political road here because I know that the vast majority of Americans, Republicans and Democrats alike, reject and condemn acts of violence where our political differences spill over into brutality, injury, and death. But we must recognize that the polarizing political rhetoric that demonizes and dehumanizes our opponents, which is suffusing our political system from the top down, and which is amplified in the anonymous echo chambers of social media, is literally killing us. We can't eliminate political differences, and indeed we don't want to. That's an essential part of democracy. But we must insist for ourselves and our community that those differences stay within the bounds of civil and respectful discourse. This is not easy a week before an important election, where non-stop negative ads dominate our television, but it's essential. As the mayor of Pittsburgh has said, we must make sure that the purveyors of hate stay in their basements and do not feel comfortable spreading their messages and incitement in public. Our local group, United Against Hate, has tried to do our part by inviting you all to publicly and proudly announce that hate has no home here. It's a small step, I know, but one we can all take. We will also be bringing that message to the Veterans Day Parade on November 11th, and we invite you to join us. If anyone would like a yard sign, I have a box of them right over here. So please see me after the vigil. Thank you.
Facebook followers, my name is Tom Lowy. I'm a reporter from the Galesburg Register Mail, and I'd like to thank you for joining the Register Mail Facebook live broadcast of the rally for the victims and survivors of the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you.